No Man's Sky has been kicking around now for 8 years, having been released in August of 2016, and many of us remember the condition to which it was released. I myself was interested in the game back then, until I saw reports of the game's state, and gave it a hard pass, not even looking in its direction for another 7 years. But now, 8 years on, not only is the game unrecognisable from its 2016 state, but the improvements made to the game in 2024 alone shows that the developers, even today, are continuing to perfect their original vision, despite having another game, Light No Fire, announced to be in development. So in this video, we'll be going through the updates that we have had so far received in 2024. But before I do, I'd like to point out one factor that continues to amaze me with this game. Regular viewers of this channel will know that I started out this channel almost exclusively covering another online sci-fi game called Eve Echoes, and I have long since accepted that subscription models are necessary to fund online-only live service games that receive continual updates in the form of new content expansions and of course bug fixes and optimizations. No Man's Sky, however, has thrown this completely out of the park, as for a single purchase of £50, which is, as far as I can tell, heavily discounted throughout the numerous expedition events throughout the year, you get all of that which I mentioned. No subscription, no paid DLC, no microtransactions. Hello Games are proof that a good game with online multiplayer and constant expansions doesn't require the player base to be milked for all they're worth. Now, that side tangent aside, let's talk about what exactly we have seen introduced into No Man's Sky in 2024. And we'll start with the Omega update. The big selling point for Omega was the fact that players were allowed to download and play the game for free during a 4-day event. But that was over 5 months ago, so let's move on. Pirate Dreadnoughts were introduced in Omega, which you could claim for your own. Of course, you didn't just walk up to a storefront for this almighty ship, you had to happen across one in space and cripple it before it walked away. Then you could of course take it for yourself, which took a certain amount of skill and preparation to pull off. This was accompanied by cosmetic items such as staffs and jetpacks that you earned by completing the Omega expedition, alongside other smaller updates including special effects and updates to the Atlas path, which can be considered as part of the game's story, alongside other new missions, optimizations and so on and so on. So not a massive update, but considering Light No Fire is likely taking up most of their development resources, we certainly can't complain. Skipping forwards a month to March, and that's right, just 1 month, we got Orbital, and this update really freshened up the experience when out in space. Up until this point in the game, the overall majority of space stations within the game were identical, both the interiors and exteriors. Well, not anymore. Taking advantage of a broader range of colours and redesigning the models to be much more distinct, you can now get that wow experience when flying up to a station. Another characteristic that I enjoy is the computer interface at the back of the station. That just reminds me of Gladys from the Portal games. Ship customization was also added in this update, with the ability to even create whole new ships from scratch, which was an update that many, including myself, greatly appreciated, as this is one of the things I wanted to see in the game before I originally purchased it, and was a little bit hesitant to in the beginning. Alongside these visual updates that were clearly geared towards the in-space experience, we saw the usual smaller updates, alongside engine improvements and other things. Take notes here, because there's still more to come. Moving on to the game's most recent update, we have Worlds Part 1, which brought with it a whole host of other visual improvements which stand out on even much weaker hardware such as the Steam Deck. The visuals for water and clouds were completely overhauled. Some planets were even given floating islands, similar to those found in Tears of the Kingdom, which come complete with their own waterfalls. Shadows within the game also saw an overhaul, adding depth and realism to the game. And just in case you thought this update was all about improving the game's lighting, think again. This update saw the introduction of new floral-based creatures, full wind simulation that applies to everything from smoke, dust, rain, snow, and other environmental effects, storms were made all that much more dramatic, to the point that the weather can throw you around if you dare to leave the ground, to the point that it can even be difficult to land in your ship. I'd love to go through every single thing that was introduced in this update, but instead I'll invite you to check out the update's release page for yourself, because it is quite extensive. Skipping past the cosmetic items for this update, we come upon engine enhancements. Not improvements, enhancements, allowing for denser worlds with increased performance with improved levels of detail. What is suspected to be going on here is that Light No Fire and No Man's Sky share the same in-house game engine, so No Man's Sky is benefiting from any development progress made on improving the engine for Light No Fire. This is the second round of improvements to the game's engine in its 8th year, and this update is titled Part 1. What on earth are they going to have for us in Part 2? Now, I know that normally in my videos I tend to include a segment whereby I talk about the game's performance on the Steam Deck, but to truly experience the awesomeness of these updates, I decided to stream the game over a free GeForce Now account and capture how the game truly looks and feels when it's given that extra juice just for this video. But don't worry, the Steam Deck can still comfortably hit 30 frames per second in handheld with the right graphical settings and still be an immersive experience, as that is still how I predominantly play the game. So has this convinced you to check out No Man's Sky? So go ahead and wishlist that game right now after you hit that subscribe button. After all, if you've made it this far into the video, you clearly enjoy listening to a British guy ramble, so why not hit that button? And with that, I bid you fly casual in No Man's Sky. See you in the next video.